Today, as we sit on the cusp of the NFL playoffs, I want to draw some parallels between Carolina Panthers football, my home team, and your writing career. Now, some of you are immediately turned off. Oh, sports ball. Oh, stick with me. I promise this will at least be mildly entertaining. Hello and Happy New Year. I'm John Hartness and I want to welcome you back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you've never been here before. I am a publisher, an author, and an editor. I've written over 40 books in my career, including The Black Knight Chronicles, Bubba the Monster Hunter, Quincy Harker Demon Hunter, and various and sundry others. I also founded Falstaff Books, an independent publisher based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Panthers, as of this recording on Sunday, January something 4th, 2026, have just won the NFC South Division title, guaranteeing them a spot in the NFL playoffs this year. And in my opinion, they are the least deserving team to ever get a shot in the NFL playoffs. Not because they have a losing record. Plenty of teams have made the playoffs with a losing record. Not because they lost the final game of the season. Plenty of teams have lost their final game. No, it's because they made their way into the playoffs through no fault of their own. Multiple times in the past 3 weeks, the Panthers have held their destiny right here in the palm of their hand. And they have dropped it every single time. If they'd managed to beat the Seattle Seahawks, tall order, the Seahawks are a very good team this year, they would have won the division and guaranteed themselves a spot in the playoffs. That was last week. If they'd beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers yesterday, they would have won the division and guaranteed themselves a spot in the playoffs. Nope. So today, their future was determined by the outcome of the Atlanta Falcons playing the New Orleans Saints. Neither of these teams could possibly make the NFL playoffs, but the winner would determine whether Carolina or Tampa Bay would make the playoffs. Because of bizarro computations and tiebreakers and things, Atlanta won, which made a three-way tie in the NFC South Division. For those of you that don't know football, there are only 4 teams in each division. 3 of the 4 were 8-9. That means they won 8 games and lost 9. Those were tied for first. No team in the NFC South has a winning record this year. And yet, the Panthers are going to the playoffs because there was a 3-way tie for first at 8-9. All 3 of those teams also had division records of 3-3, meaning they won 3 division games and lost 3 division games. Pinnacle of mediocrity. But through some arcane calculation involving head-to-head matchups and shared opponents and things, the Panthers somehow stumbled into a playoff victory. And that got me to thinking about your writing career. Because some things are just going to be flat out of your control. Luck has a lot to do with success in this industry. Not everything, but a good bit. For example, when I really started making money as a writer was in the summer of 2010. That coincided with 2 important things in the traditional publishing landscape. One, Jim Butcher had not published a book in the Dresden Files for over a year, and there was not a new one on the horizon because Jim, I don't know why. I think maybe he was having some personal stuff going on. It was taking him a little longer than normal to get the next book out. So people who wanted snarky male protagonist-driven urban fantasy suddenly didn't have their favorite fix, which at the time was the Dresden Files. For a lot of people, that's still the Dresden Files, and that's fine because they're awesome books. Number two, Kevin Hearn launched the Iron Druid Chronicles that same year. And his publisher at the time, I want to say Del Rey? I could be wrong. His publisher at the time had him turn in all three of the first three books of the manuscript, first three books of the series, and then they released them June, July, August. Bam, bam, bam. This filled a void of the Dresden Files readers and rekindled market interest in urban fantasy. And after Dresden Files fans went to the Dresden Files Amazon pages and they said, well, there's no new Dresden Files, they scrolled down to You Might Also Like, and there was Kevin's book. So they bought the first Iron Druid book, and they liked it. Again, they're good books. Then they finished that, and they're like, oh, wait, is the second one out? Oh, the second one's not out. And scrolled down, You May Also Like Hard Day's Night, the Black Knight Chronicles, book 1. By me. I made thousands of dollars off of being the first thing in Kevin Hearn's also boughts that summer. That was 100% out of my control. I didn't know Kevin. I didn't know Kevin existed when I wrote those books. The first Iron Druid book was his debut, so unless I was stalking the Absolute Right water cooler, I wouldn't have known Kevin at the time. Have since met him several times. I really like him. He's a nice guy. Has always seemed to be great. I knew about the Dresden Files, but I didn't time my release to fill a gap in Butcher's release schedule. I didn't even know there was a gap in his release schedule. I wrote my book. I self-published it at the exact right time. I got lucky. And sometimes you're going to have to get lucky. If you send in a manuscript to an agent that is brilliant and it is unlike anything they've ever seen, and they send you a contract for representation, awesome. If you send them that same book a week after somebody else sends them a very similar book with a similar skill level, you're probably not getting that contract. Not awesome. Also not your fault. A lot of your failures in your writing career are not going to be your fault. I have a background in theater and in community theater. I have directed, I have produced, I have performed. There have been many times when a very talented actor did not get a role through absolutely zero fault of their own. They just looked too much like someone I had already cast in that show, and I couldn't replace that actor, so they were already locked, and this person looked too much like them to play their antagonist, so this person lost out. Somebody comes in and they're incredibly talented, but they're auditioning for a leading man role and they're 5'4", and the person I'd have them playing opposite is 5'9", and the stage picture just didn't work. No fault of their own. So how do you deal with luck? How do you manufacture luck? You could be like the Carolina Panthers and stumble bum your way through the entire season, and maybe one of your division rivals gives you a gift on the last day of the season. Don't count on that. You are much more likely to be able to create your own luck when preparation meets perspiration. Luck happens. But the harder you work, the luckier you get. I couldn't have capitalized on the timing good fortune that I had if I didn't already have a book. And if I didn't already have a good book. You still have to put in all the work. There's a book by John Scalzi called When the Moon Hits Your Eye. It's his most recent release, very fun read. I listened to the audiobook narrated by Will Wheaton and quite enjoyed it. There's a story in there of an author. Shocker, John Scalzi writes a book about a guy who writes books. It is not a self-insert, although the guy who writes the book's kind of a nerd, so maybe it's a little bit of a self-insert. This author has written a nonfiction book called That's No Moon, and it's pop culture and astronomy stuffs, kind of. But it doesn't sell very well. It's a good book. He's got an agent. It did okay. It'll probably get him another contract somewhere, but it's not going to get him a real big advance until, in the narrative of the book, the moon turns to cheese. Not green cheese, just cheese. The moon turns to cheese. All of a sudden, the guy who wrote the book called That's No Moon is on every talk show, is on the top of every bestseller list through no fault of his own, except he wrote a good book. He had studied his craft. This character had been in the business a while. He had put in the work and was ready to capitalize on his good fortune. So let's say, for example, you are a publisher. Let's say, for example, one of the preeminent editors in one of your genres released her recommended reading list for that genre. In case you don't know, and I expect a lot of you don't, I'm talking about Ellen Datlow's Best Horror of the Year, Volume 17, and her recommended reading list for horror stories released in 2024. That list just came out today, I believe. And 4 of the stories from one of our anthologies were mentioned in the recommended reading list. I was thrilled to see that. It's our Nevermore anthology, edited by Misty Massey, and the stories that were mentioned were by Rachel Brune, by Kat Richardson, by Day Al-Mohammed, and by me. I was especially honored to be mentioned because I didn't really think it was much of a horror story. I don't think most of the things I've ever written have been horror stories. But hey, if people want to mention me in august company like Stephen King and Chris Golden and Tim Leben and Tim Wagner, I'll take it. So we had 4 stories in that anthology mentioned on this recommended reading list. That's lucky. I didn't make Ellen pick those stories. If you've ever met Ellen Datlow and think you can make Ellen Datlow do anything, you're a braver soul than I am. I did send her a copy of the anthology. That was my preparation. I did write as good a story as I could. That was my perspiration. Misty Massey, the editor, did a lot more perspiration than I did. So now it's on me to capitalize on that. So how am I going to do that? Well, I posted to my and the Falstaff social media today mentioning these 4 stories, and I put a link to our Shopify site where people can order the book. Tomorrow, I'll send out a newsletter. I will mention that again in the newsletter and put links where people can buy the book. When good things happen, you have to be able to capitalize on them. Another great example My friend Edie Skye, who wrote Cat Girls from Outer Space with her husband, Jacob Hola. Well, something about this book offended far-right book talk and offended men who thought that having a super pink cover would give them girl cooties or something. Edie even calls this the Extra Girl Cooties Special Edition. So, of course, I ordered it immediately. It's really cute. It's got cat girls on the cover, on the sprayed edges. It's shiny. And I'm a sucker. I'm a magpie. I'm a sucker for shiny things. Well, one of her videos about this book blew up on social media. She capitalized by making sure that she had enough on hand to fulfill her Shopify orders, and she spent 2 days packing books and shipping books. I capitalize on her success by A, buying the book to support my friend, and 2, featuring it in my video where I then say, by the way, I have now a shiny book that is available on the Falstaff Books Shopify. This is our special edition of Quincy Harker Year 1, and it's got your end papers and your sprayed edges and your ribbony bookmark and your custom chapter, your front page chapter stuffs, and it's really pretty. So if you're a magpie, you should buy this. I have a few copies left after the initial pre-order. Once I run out, it'll take me about a month to get more because I have to ship them from England. So I'm capitalizing on my friend's success by showing off my shiny book next to her shiny book. You have to pay attention to the market. You have to pay attention to things that are going on. And I'm never going to tell you to write to market or to write to a trend. Because I firmly believe that if you're trying to write to a trend in publishing, that by the time you can write and produce a quality book, the trend will likely be over. If you started writing a dystopian young adult trilogy when the Hunger Games first blew up, by the time you got your book written and edited and produced, the guild would already be off the lily quite a bit. You can't predict a trend, and you can't really write in response to a trend. But if you see a trend or see something in popular culture, and you have something in your catalog that fits with that, that's what you can capitalize on. Sinners is a phenomenal movie. Michael B. Jordan legit deserves 2 Best Actor nominations for his work in that film. And I expect it's going to get a lot of Oscar talk in the first chunk of next year. I will then be marketing Southern Cross, a horror novel we produced in 2025 by Vaughn A. Jackson that also has similar themes in that it's Southern vampires and vampires are the bad guys, as opposed to stuff I write where vampires are frequently the good guys. That's how you capitalize on luck. You pay attention and then you move. If you are a self-published author, you are eminently more capable of doing this than a traditionally published author because you have the ultimate control on all of your work. But even if you are a big-time New York author, you can still market the hell out of your work. You have social media. You have a YouTube account. You're watching this on one. So you can take control of that aspect of your career, and then you can capitalize on luck. Anyway, luck happens when preparation meets perspiration, but you still have to capitalize on luck. So be ready. Make your own luck. Don't be like my Panthers and count on somebody else to make success for you. because they don't care as much about your career as you do. Only you can prevent forest fires, and only you can build your career. That's all I got for right now. Check out all the links below. If you want to learn more about how to create your own luck and market your books and write better books, please join us this March for the Saga Conference in Charlotte. There's information down below. You can click on the link, get your tickets. You can learn directly from me, a lot of our editors, as well as some New York Times bestsellers that we'll have on faculty here in Charlotte, first weekend in March. And if you want to get these videos a little early, you can become a member and join these fine folks whose names are appearing on your screen, and you'll get a little shout out in every video, as well as getting my stuff early. And if you just want to support the channel for completely free, click that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below about some of the best and worst luck you've had in your career. Till next time, bye.